Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you for being here well ahead of time because we've had a couple of withdrawals. So just when members thought they were going to get a cup of coffee, they had something much more enjoyable. So welcome.
I don't know if we're more enjoyable than coffee. I suppose it depends on the quality of the coffee here. But thank you, Mr. Chair. And it's always great showing up early so I can hear folks like Rewiring Aotearoa. It's always fun to chat with them and hearing how they see opportunities in here. I will kind of lead off and then I'll punt to my colleague, Dr. Benno Blaschke, who's done the main work on this for us and who has a report forthcoming that we'll be sending to the committee as soon as it's ready. It's going through some more editorial and review processes, but it gets into a lot more depth. At a high level, some of what Rewiring Aotearoa is talking about leads into what we see as potential opportunities for improvement here. So we would love to get, first, tremendously important work, and it's part of these kind of cross-party push towards enabling more housing. It's critically important for that as well as for other work. We would love some augmentations to this to make sure that it can achieve its full potential, particularly private initiation of some of these IFF debt vehicles, democratic assent mechanisms to make sure that everybody's happy with the levies that are put on their properties for the projects that are being undertaken, that they see the projects as being worthwhile. Some of what we see in the legislation and in the prior frameworks has maintained a cabinet check on a lot of this in lieu of having that kind of democratic assent mechanism for the levied properties. And if I start thinking about projects for larger scale battery schemes, it would be neat to enable communities to come up with these arrangements, to pitch them as a project where there's a levy on the property that funds, that provides the funding for the debt that finances the project, but you also have the assent of those whose properties are being levied for the project, because that helps ensure that, well, that it passes its own kind of benefit cost assessment, that in the view of those who are levied for the project is worthwhile. I'll shut up and punt to Benno.
Okay, thank you. So our board position is that we support the bill. Having said that, so we're not here to take issue with anything that's in the bill. What I'm here to do is to talk about what may not be there. And so the key message is that the bill should be the beginning of a journey, not a destination. The original purpose for the very idea of this type of model was to create a second alternative, or you could say in this case, additional finance system that runs in parallel to the one we already have. And it was conceived as part of the overall effort to achieve housing affordability and to change the dynamics in land markets. So basically, this model, or let's say not necessarily this current model, but the model that was meant to come into existence and that this one is starting to move towards, is, you could say, a necessary precondition. It's not optional. And what I'm going to say is that the evolution, the further evolution of this model is also not optional. So what we have currently is not enough and not sufficient, but it's also the best I suspect we can do right now. And the changes that are being made are good, and those are the types of first steps I would also take. But what we would like to advocate for is some additional steps so that a greater strategic posture can be taken in relationship to this work. And that strategic posture is to, as I said, to develop that kind of alternative finance system in a broader sense. And I want to talk a little bit more about that. So I'd like to start with Infocom that put out its National Infrastructure Plan. And its basic conclusion is that we need to do better with what we've got with the existing current system. Not only that, but it's also told us that we spend maximally in the OECD, but we're also maximally inefficient. And basically what they're saying, in my point of view, is that we're bleeding money. And not only that we're bleeding money, but that looking ahead in the future, we're going to reach multiples of our GDP, that it's not sustainable, and that we won't be able to have the services. For example, the older generation, those retiring, won't have the services they need. And the younger generations, also my generation, won't have what it needs to transform land markets and get housing affordability. So that's basically what I took from the Infocom. And made some recommendations about what to do with our existing system. And it pointed towards this alternative system in its work. It started talking about alternative ways of financing infrastructure, particularly for different types of projects like growth infrastructure. And through doing that, to basically alleviate the pressure on the existing basic finance channel that we do have, so that that finance channel can work more to actually to deliver other types of infrastructure, particularly the ones that, for example, the older generation of renewals and those types of things that are going to need to be done. So basically freeing up capacity. So for me, this particular work has generational stakes, both for younger future generations, but also the existing generation that's aging. So what I'm saying is that we need two systems. One is the existing finance system and the one that this model is trying to create. This model, however, doesn't achieve it yet. I think that's a critical thing, and I would like to talk a little bit about that and how it was originally conceived. The existing system you could conceive as, I'll name it the central channel as a pie. It can't grow very fast. It's like a wage earner. It gets rates, and it has basically a capped ability to raise debt. And ability to raise further debt is limited by its ability to get a higher wage. Not only that, but the existing pie, I would maybe say, is not used very efficiently, and the efficiency incentives are very low. So there's a lot of discussion, for example, in Infocom's work of how we can improve on our efficiency and how we invest in infrastructure and making sure that we don't bleed as much. The other thing, the third aspect of the pie, is that politics is very much involved. So there's a real issue with prioritization, that a lot that we're paying for is actually not necessarily what we need. Conversely, the alternative finance system actually turns all of those three aspects of the pie around. It works by virtue of growing the pie and pays off what it creates by growing that pie. It creates value, and it creates variable streams on the basis of that value created. So rather than a wage earner, it's more like an entrepreneur. It creates business, or it creates valuable activity, and that valuable activity itself pays its business. The other one is it has different efficiency incentives, because people that raise the debt, they get involved or put in the equity to develop the project, they have skin in the game. They care about how much they're paying. The third aspect is that investment follows value, and that's also where the beneficiary kind of consent mechanism comes in play. People are willing to pay for what they consider as valuable, and they'll think hard about whether it is in fact valuable and it's worth what they're paying for. That is not to say that the central channel is bad. It's needed. We can't do without. But what I'm saying is it's not enough. And I would like to point to the Productivity Commission's report, Infrastructure Funding and Financing in Local Government, 2019. Their conclusion was effectively that our current rating-based framework and our funding system only works in a static environment. That means no growth, no change, we can cope. As soon as we go beyond that, for example, if we want to change the nature of the landmarks, the planning system, we want to go for growth, we want to serve future generations, and we want to serve our existing generations with the services they need in the future, it will not suffice. That's what their conclusion was. And they, as a consequence, recommended to develop alternative finance vehicles, which is this model.
We've got some recommendations. We're happy to talk about those or to answer broader questions on it. Benno's got a large report that'll be coming.
Yeah.
This has been a bit of a preview of some of the stuff that's going to be in there, but we thank the committee for pursuing this work. It's really important.
I think I'd like to leave a last thing. The current model still relies on the Crown to back it. The only way to get the alternative finance system we really want is if that gets, I would say, removed. That's the only way that we can get true what we call non-recourse finance. And that's where finance is bottom-up, enabled, created, and authorized, and dynamic. And that's the kind of dynamism we need in our land markets. So without that, it's not going to work. And by saying that now, I'm not trying to say, oh, just the Crown get out of it. The Crown is in there for a reason. That's because our current institutions don't allow non-recourse finance. So our broad recommendation is we need a strategic posture and do a few things more in this bill to start the journey, not that this is a destination, to start developing those institutions to eventually be able to withdraw the GSP, the government support package, so that true non-recourse finance becomes really possible in New Zealand. And as a final thing, New Zealand used to finance over 50% of all its local infrastructure through this type of mechanism, and we removed it. And the consequence is shortage.
We did it before, we can do it again. Happy to take questions.
Okay, good way to finish. Okay, Celia Brown.
Thank you. Yeah, I just had a question about the type of infrastructure, and this is, I'm a guest on this select committee, so if it's obvious, I apologise. But I was thinking about the types of infrastructure that should or shouldn't be covered by this, and I have particular interest in stormwater management, and sometimes that's both better for the environment, but also more cost effective if it's natural plantings and so on, which need maintenance rather than concrete. Not always, but sometimes. Do you see this mechanism potentially be able to fund that and the ongoing maintenance?
Yeah, I think that, okay, we've suggested a mechanism where the assent of the rated properties determines whether the project should go ahead.
Yeah.
If a stormwater project is viewed by the property owners in the area as far more cost effective than anything else that they could have, absolutely. So you'd have a vote of the affected ratepayers saying, we want this project and we're happy to pay an extra $100 or whatever it is on our rates for the next 20 years to cover the cost of it. That kind of flexibility means that whatever comes up from the community that's affected can be authorized without select committee or parliament having to put an itemized list of these things and not these things. It would be the assent of the rated properties that says whether the project can go ahead.
And you don't see anything in this or the bill that it amends that would limit what we might mean by infrastructure or...
The original bill had a list of type infrastructure for which it was valid. I was involved in specifying that list, or like I was involved in expanding the list because I wanted communities and resilience and those type of infrastructure to be present as well. I personally think that any such limit is a limit and it may not be necessary, but like as long as you don't have community assent, it gets more difficult for the accountability, which is why the democratic kind of representative authorizing mechanism is so fundamental.
You need to have an itemized list if you're not going back to the people who are being rated for it, because they might have something imposed on them that they really don't value. But if they say, no, we want this and it's enthusiastic, open it up.
Yeah. I would like to add here, the Infracom did talk about this in the report, that there's types of infrastructure that is naturally more suitable for that type of thing. And it's not to say that other types of infrastructure can't be, but they figured that growth infrastructure is a classic example. Massive bulk infrastructure. If you have the payments go over time, you've got multiple generations actually paying for the contribution of the benefits. So that lends itself well. Renewals are a bit different. Renewals may be a bit on geodet, like the central channel is possibly a bit more efficient. It's cheaper. The existing rating base is already there. It doesn't mean it can't be done, but the different finance vehicles might be more suitable for different things. It doesn't mean that there should be a natural limit though.
And it starts getting into some complexity around the existing rates, what you're paying for, and a top up on top. But yeah.
Thank you.
Good. Just a quick supplementary.
Yes,
Well,
Todd,
not supplementary, but supplementary on what you asked. You said this report is coming.
Yep.
Yes. I want to
How quickly is it like?
It's going to be, we're going to be providing it as supplementary evidence after. We are going to be releasing it early April.
So what we can also do is just send an embargoed copy to every member of the committee when we leave here, just recognizing that there might be changes yet.
No, the only reason I'm asking is because obviously.
You're deliberating right now, right?
Yeah, so just to be clear, it covers how it was created, the model, why, how it's evolved, how it's been applied, and it also goes through the history of finance in New Zealand and what we have done in the past. And it basically explains the intricacies of how it works and what was actually meant to be created and how to get there.
I guess as background, Benno was with HUD for a while.
And Treasury.
And with Treasury and with LGNZ.
I've been around the traps.
He's been involved in this issue for like a decade, so.
With the chair's indulgence,
Oh, for sure. And we are running a full select committee process with this 6 months. We're not reporting back till the 9th of June. We extended submissions out till the 20th of February to give the TLAs every opportunity to submit. We are all wanting good advice on this, so we're waiting to report. With
I've also got involvement from NIFCO, that's the National Infrastructure Funding Company, and also Treasury, that were present for designing the model.
Okay, anyone else? Dr. Wilson.
Yeah, without having read the report, can you give us some examples of what you would call non-recourse finance, where that's coming from? Because does this
Oh,
open
sure.
the door slightly more?
Nio Town Hall.
Sure. So I'll just give an example from a report that I put out a couple of years ago. I live in Kandala. A 20-minute walk from my house is the Nio Town Hall. There's a plaque on the wall of Nio Town Hall explaining that it was built by the Nio Progressive Residents Association. They had wanted a town hall. They had a ballot of the local community, and they said, we are happy to pay an extra 20 pounds on our rates for the next 10 years to pay off any debt that the council takes on to build this hall. They took that authorization vote to council. Council puts the levy provides the financing. They pay it off over time. Everybody wanted it. They built it themselves. Council wasn't on the hook for it. Now, if everybody in the community had gone bankrupt, well, then the debt would not have been paid back, but it wouldn't have been council's debt, right? That's what non-recourse means, that the properties that are levied are the ones standing behind it. There isn't recourse either to sue the Crown to pay you or council. That keeps it separate, and it means that communities can go ahead and build awesome things without people telling them no if they want to do it.
Another example is the Harbour Bridge and also the general electrification of all of New Zealand.
Yeah. I remember my 2 shillings. Thanks very much. So
Don't mean-
supplementary.
Dr. Wilson.
Two different examples are, I think, instructive. So you had a discussion about stormwater, which is not a localized issue.
That's right.
It's a systemic issue across much larger, if you like, rate take or how it's funded, as opposed to a new park or a new wall or anything else that the community can get by. How would you address those kind of larger systemic infrastructure programs of work that need to be happened? And when we're talking about integration councils and thinking more regionally, that becomes even more of an issue to address.
Okay, so we've already gotten an example of Wellington Council imposing
That's
a
right.
levy
Yep.
through IFF for the sludge plant. People can argue the merits of the sludge plant, but it is a bit of infrastructure that serves a pretty broad community. I would have preferred that go through a democratic assent process, but it's showing that you can use this mechanism for infrastructure that affects a large range of properties. And the kind of assent mechanism that was present in the Local Body Loans Act 1913 and then amended in 28 is a double majority threshold. You needed a majority of rated properties by number constituting a majority by value. And it makes sure that you're not getting projects that just benefit some small concentrated group or that impose a lot of cost on one group rather than another. The community wants the project, it can go ahead, and it could be as broad as a stormwater network or as narrow as a town hall.
Yeah, just to say that this type of mechanism is already in place in policy by Wellington Council. So, and that's pretty much a gold standard and can be just transported.
Ms. Wade Brown will know that well, the ideas.
Okay, Dr. Megan Woods.
Thank you, and thank you for your submission. Interested in the recommendation, we discussed it at 4.10, saying Treasury should develop a framework that standardises Crown risk across qualifying projects rather than negotiating terms project by project.
Yep.
I think really interesting suggestion, and limiting the total Crown exposure. Just in terms of that standardised framework, just interested to know, would you see that being differentiated by procurement model and the different ways that different procurement models are costing risk and where they're putting it?
They can do that. The point is that they have a framework that people can pick up. That's the point.
Yeah, so you'd see that slotted.
Yeah.
into different
And that's so
procurement
the
models.
transaction cost of doing the transaction get lowered.
Yeah, I
Yeah, and
see.
that means it gets cheaper and easier to get bigger projects like smaller projects off the ground.
So we'd have a bit more transparency there of how a kind of a design and build would be costing the risk as opposed to.
Yep. Standardization doesn't mean
Different
single
way.
form.
Cool, okay, thank you.
Okay, right. I think any other questions?
That's good. Thank
for
you,
NZ
both.
Initiative? No, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you,
Appreciate
committee.
you taking the
Thank you.
time. Thank you.